Hello developers, welcome back to this channel. In this video we are going to talk about an interesting topic that is most confusing. It confuses a lot of people, but we are going to discuss that in this video. And that topic is Introduction to Authentication with Client-Side Blazor using the Web API and ASP.NET Core Identity. So I have a video done on authentication with client-side and server-side using individual account. So with individual account, it is an inbuilt mechanism that generates and do everything for us. All that you need is to create a project, and now with authentication type, we select an individual account and we apply migration and we have everything. But what in case we want to go it step by step? So we can assign roles, policies, and etc. That is where we need to do it ourselves. We need to perform the manual one, and that is what we are going to actually perform here. So this particular is going to be a little bit long, so stay cool with me whilst we move on. And I'm going to start from scratch for you to know step by step of doing that. Okay. So this video is going to help you a lot. Before that, let's try to have an overview of what authentication means. Maybe the next video I'm going to cover authorization as well, but for now, authentication is what we want to cover here. Now, when you talk about authentication, the question is, what does it mean, or what is authentication? Authentication is simply the process of determining if someone is who he or she claims to be. When you have an application, maybe you like people to register before they can use the application. In a normal sense, when registering an application, what you need is your username and password. That is what we can use to log in. After registration, the user might or have to log in so you can see, is it the same person who created an account with us? If yes, then you can now check the username and the password that is going to pass in to the previous one that he used for the registration. Now, if they correspond, then what do? You assign them into your application. That is what we call authentication. So authentication means providing a mechanism for user to register and also log in with the same credentials used into your application. Now, when the person is logged in, you could see he or she may have an extra features. When application is open to public, there are some features that are hidden from public. As soon as you log in as a user, you may have those features. So this is done by the help of authentication. And that is what we are going to talk about in this video. So this is going to be a practical base using the WebAssembly project, okay, or WebAssembly app. Now, to do this, we have to start with our Visual Studio, and the current .NET framework that I am using is 7.0 as I record this video. So Visual Studio 2022, and the version of the .NET framework is 7.0. Let's start to create a project. Okay, so I launch a Visual Studio and now create a project. So file, new, then project. Now this project is going to be a WebAssembly project. So select WebAssembly project, click on next, give it a name. This is the location where you want your project to be found and the solution name. Now click on next, and now this is a framework .NET 7.0. You choose that and you go in for the ASP.NET Core hosted, because it gives us three projects: the client project, the API, and also a class library as a shared project. So three projects added together or combined together as this ASP.NET Core hosted. Now with authentication type, in the previous video, to use the inbuilt one, you go for individual account, but I have done the video on that already. So this time around, we're going to have choose none, because we're going to create ourselves. And now click on create. So I have a project already, and I've created one already, and that is a JWT demo. If I run this project, this is what you can see. Now this is the default one that you know when you create a project, when you create an application, an app with the Blazor assembly, you have this when you run. So when you're at this stage, that's the first stage. Kudos, you're done. Now the next thing that you have to do is quite simple. Let's see what you have to do. We have to install some packages, and that's what we're going to use for our application. So the question is, what are some of the packages that we want to, or we have to install? You will see we have 3 projects joined together. Client project, we have an API, we have a shared project. That's a class library. We're going to work first on the API project. Then we go to the class library and we go to the client project. Okay, so with the server project, or that's the API, which is the server, we need to install some few packages to enable us to work. Now let's go to the Solution Explorer here, and on our server project, so there's a server project, click on dependencies, and now right click and go to manage NuGet packages. Now with these NuGet packages, we need to install the following packages. So we need to install Microsoft.ASP.NetCore.Authentication.JWT So let's see, I think I have installed them already. So let's see. So first of all, we need to install Microsoft.ASP.NetCore.Authentication.JWT So we need to install this over here. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to install Identity.UI. So Microsoft.ASP.NetCore.Identity.UI. So install this, install that. Now the next one is we need to install Entity Framework Core, and that is the Entity Framework Core over here. So we need to install Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.Tools, okay, .SQL Server, and we need to install Diagnostic.Entity Framework Core. Okay, so and the last one, if you're not having Microsoft.ASP.NET Core component.WebAssembly.server, but there is a default one. As soon as you create a project, you have this installed already. So these are the ones that you have to install for now. With the rest, with the Swashbuckle, you can also install the Swashbuckle for an API interface. So API UI, install this Swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core. When we get to the use, I'll tell you what you're going to use this for. Okay, so install Swashbuckle.ASP.NET Core, and Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.Tools, Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.SQL Server, Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Identity.UI, and Microsoft.ASP.NET Core Identity.Entity Framework Core, Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Diagnostic.Entity Framework Core, and Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Authentication.JWT. So these are the packages that you need to install. So you can just grab them to the Browse tab and install them. When you are done, kudos, that is the next stage. Now the next thing to do here is to set our connection string. So connection string is what the database is going to use to connect to our database, or to create a database for us. That is what the system is going to use to create a database connection. And we have to do that in the AppSettings.josn file. Solution Explorer. Now AppSettings.josn file, click on that. And now here, that's where you need to specify our database connection. Okay, so with this connection, I think I have one here. So let's see if we can actually use that. So that is a connection. So we need to pass in a connection to that. So here, so we have our connection strings, and we have the name of our connection is default connection. Our local, our database is JWT demo. Okay, so I learned I have the database here already. So let's go to SQL Server Object. Let me try to delete that. I want to delete this database, or what I can do here is maybe I can decide to change the name of this database, but I want it to correspond with the project name. So let's see here. Alright, so I have this, can open that, and database. Do I have JWT demo? Yeah, it is right here. So let me delete that. Close connections and close it. Alright, so we see we are not having, we have the JWT DB. So with this, I'm going to delete that. I can see it is gone. It is no more here. Okay, so once you have this, that's the name for the database, JWT demo, that's the database name. Alright, and now you have trusted connection, we set to true, and trust server certificate, we also set to true. Make sure you have this command to separate this from that, so you won't get any error in it. Good, so if you are done, save it, and now we are good to go. Now the next step that to do here is to set up an identity database, and in order to do that, you have to create our application DB contest. Now that application DB contest, this is going to inherit from identity DB contest. Now this Identity DB contest has all the mechanism that we need to create a database tables. So let's do that. Close this Solution Explorer. Now we have to create a folder named as data. So right click and add a folder. That's going to be data. Now this data, let's create a class that is application DB contest. So class, and so application DB contest, and just copy this. Now in here, application DB contest. So I can just copy this from here and paste it like this. Okay, so now with this, the package that we installed, that is where it's coming from. So when you take off this, let's see, and when you take off this as well, we're gonna have errors here. So control plus period, that's a dot, we have to use anti-framework core. Okay, and this is gone. Now with this too, with DB contest option, control plus period, we have to use the same anti-framework core, and this is also gone. So we need to use these two packages that we installed earlier on as a NuGet package to set up this DB contest. So this DB contest here, Identity DB contest, has all the columns, all the tables that's going to use in a connection. So for now, we are not specifying any database here because we have the database tables defaultly set in the Identity DB contest. Let's save this. Okay, so once you have this set, the next thing that we can actually do here is to register the database connection in the program.cs file. So let's go there, program.cs file, that's under the server project, and this is what we have to do first. We have to register the database connection, and program.cs file, let's register the database connection. So we can do that by using this line of code to register. So register this. So you see we are using builder.services.add contest. We pass in the application DB contest class we just created, and we pass in use what SQL server. So this is coming from Identity Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.SQL server. So that's the package that you're using over here. And now we get the connection string from the AppSettings.josn file that we created. Remember that we created a connection known as default connection. So we read the connection over here. Okay, so once you are done, we have to add registered identity user as well. Remember that we added from the app, that is the application DB contest, we inherited from the identity DB contest. So we have to also register that service over here. And to do that, we can just use this to register that. And builder.services. Okay, so builder.services dot add default identity, we pass an identity user. Okay, then here we use the identity framework store. So we can use this to register that identity DB contest. Now once you are done with this, we are good to go. What you can do here is to perform a database migration. So let's save this, close this, then let's close this. Wow, it's not closing, so let's see. Alright, so it is gone. So let's click on Tools, now NuGet Package Manager, and click on Package Manager Console. Now we need to perform database migration. Now database migration is going to be used, or is going to run the Identity Framework Core, is going to run the necessary queries that it needs to generate the migration file. And as soon as you perform an update database, it's going to run that queries as an SQL query and create database and the tables for us. So to do that, we pass in add-migration, Now the name of the migration is, let's say it's initial, then -o. Then -o doesn't mean, so -o, then we have data, so we think the data folder. O is the output, so where do you want to store this migration folder? So we give it a data, that is folder name as data. We have that folder already, so and the name that you want to give it to that migration is what? Migrations. So let's just on the enter key. Now we wait for the migration to be done. So as you can see, we succeeded. Now it's going to run that. After that, we have to update the database. So we update the database to run that query for us. So you can see we have the migration file generated, and you can see it is done. So update database. So this is going to run the necessary queries you need to create the tables or to run the queries in the migration file. Here, that's the initial migration file. So it also has to build it and run the query. So we wait for it to finish, then we can move on. Alright, so you can see it is done now. Now let's go to SQL Server Object, or click on the View tab, and now you can see SQL Server Object here and SQL Server Object. Now let's refresh this, and here let's open the database. So you can see we have JWT demo. So open that, open tables. Now you can see we have all the necessary database table here, and this was introduced, or this was created by the EFCore, and it took it from the Identity.DB context specified in the Application.DB context class. Okay, so once you're done with it, the next thing here is we have to enable the authentication, or we have to register the authentication service. So to do that, let's close this, click on Solution Explorer. Now under program.cs file, we have to register it over here. So this is the next line. Let's register that, and that's what you need to use to register. So register authentication service. We use this register authentication service. So we are using the JwtBearer default, and we have write date, issue, I set it through, audience, and the lifetime. So with this, we are going to understand this. Issuer is the one sending, audience, the receiver, and the lifetime is the days that you want the authentication or the token to get expired. And this the secret key that we're going to use. So all these key features, we are going to specify them inside the AppSettings.josn. Okay, so once you have this set, okay, so that is it. Once you have this set, the next thing that we can actually do here is we have to set up these keys so we can actually use them. Now remember that as soon as you see builder.configuration, we are going in for the AppSettings.josn file. So let's set that these keys. So in that's the app settings. This is what we need to set up in that. So let's copy this, and in the app settings, so let's close this, and well, let's save this first. Solution Explorer. Now in the AppSettings.josn, the next line here, let's paste it here. Now make sure you have a comma separate the next from the already ones. So you can see we have the secret key. Now this is a random key, must not be shared. Now this key here, it can be dynamic. You can change it to any text that you want, but it should more than 16 characters. Okay, and this is the issue, and this is the audience. So localhost, that's a server, and the expiry date is what? 1. So when you create a token, expiry date is 1. So when a day passed, it has expired. You can increase this to 2, 3, 4, and you can also add hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, and etc. You can add them over here. Okay, so we have this. Let's save this. Now after saving, the next thing that we can actually do here is we have to enable authentication middleware pipeline. So how can we do that? And this can be done inside the application, that's the program.cs file. So here we have to enable them here. And how do you enable them? You can just grab the code, and that is a very simple thing. There are 2 lines of code: app.use authentication and app.use authorization. So these are the middleware pipeline that we need to enable them here. Okay, so these are the two things that we need to. So this is the first one. Authentication must come first before authorization, because user must log in before you can assign role to the user. So we must have it in order as you see here. Save this, and now let's close that. So yeah, it is gone. Okay, so what you have to do here is you have to add a controller to create an account. So let's create an account controller. If somebody wants to register, he needs a controller to be registered. So let's see controller, right click on controller, add new controller, and at this controller is going to select an API empty one, and the name is going to be account controller. So let's add account controller. Now with this account controller, what I think that we need to do first, so I have it account controller. Now the first thing is you have to create a constructor and inject these services. So a user manager service, so let's create a constructor here. Now to create a constructor, I can just click on this control plus period, and you can now go in for generate constructor here. Okay, so I have mine here and I'll paste it here. So you can see we have user manager, and we inject it over here and we initialize it, so we can actually use this user manager henceforth. Okay, so now we have this set. What we can do next is, let's see, if I want to create an account, how am I going to do it? That is the next thing. So it's going to be a post request, and now this post request, there is a method which we're going to use to create this account. And as you can see from here, post request, and the name is post. Okay, or let's say you can make it a create account, or we can use sign up or create accounts. Okay, now we need to use a register model. This model is coming from the user, so things that we need to take from the user, we use this to hold that, and we store it in we create a variable for identity user, then we pass username to email and email to email. So from that, we create the identity by getting the user password and getting user email and username. If it is successful, we return this success is equal to true. But if it is not, then we store the errors here and return the errors through this result. Okay, so once you have this, let's get going and create that result. So to do that, we have to create that in the shared folder. That's the shared project. So right click on the shared project, let's add a new folder as models. So here is models, and now with these models, let's go in there and create that. So we have to create register model first. So register model first. The reason why we are creating those models in the shared project is shared means anything found within that shared project can be used by the client side and the server side as well. So that's why we are passing it into the shared as a universal one. So this is the register model. So let's copy this register model, and now in here, let's create a class as add new class, and register model, click on add, and these are the things that we need to set it up for the user. So let's copy this, and these are the properties that we need over here. Now this is going to be public. Okay, so we need email. Okay, we need password, we need confirm password. Now confirm password, we compare with the password and see if they are equal. So that's why we need this. We use this attribute, compare attribute. Now this is a display name, confirm password, and this is a data type as password. So while you're having these errors, control plus period, let's use component dot annotations. So there's component model dot data annotations to have all these attributes work. Now here we want the string length, so we can pass in just 2 or 3 characters. Now take note, maximum is 100 and minimum is 6, so it should be 7 up to 99 or 100. And you have email, so email to this mechanism, this attribute also check if you have that @ symbol in it. So these are the required, and all these they are required, so you need to provide them before you can move on with it. Okay, so So once you have this, let's save that, and now you have to create a registration result. So we can find a registration result over here. So that is, we have only 2 properties in, and that's what you're going to use. So right click on this, let's add class, and the name is registration result. This registration result, we need to pass in only these 2 properties. That's going to be an output to render if the process is success or not. So we have to boolean successful, so we're going to return true or false. Now you have an error, that's a string of enumerable of errors or list of errors. So characters, we can pass in the text that you want to display to user. Okay, so we are done with this. We can now close this, can close this, and now here control plus period, let's include the models, and we are good to go. So this is solved now. Now let's test this and see if this is working. Okay, so we have the registration, it is now working. But before we can actually test this, what are the things that you need to do? You know, we want to test an API, so we have to use Postman or Postman. But since I'm not having Postman here, or we don't want to use that, you can also install the Swashbuckle, and we can use the UI, that's the Swagger UI, to set or to post message to this and check a database and see if what you provided has been stored. Okay, so now remember that we installed the Swashbuckle to the dependencies folder. Now let's come here and I use that. So in order to use that, let's close this Solution Explorer. Now click on program.cs file. Now in here we can use builder.services. So .add, and that's a Swagger gen. We close it, and now we have to configure the middleware pipeline, and we can use that over here. So let's see. So app.use Swagger. So use Swagger, and the next one is app.use Swagger UI. So that is it. Now let's save this, and now let's see if application is going to refresh itself, and we test the API to see if account can be created. So let's click on this, load it again, and let's wait for it to reload. Then we see if we can create the application or the account. All right, so now since we haven't tackled the client section yet, we are not going to see anything unless the default one. Let's navigate to the Swagger. So we navigate to Swagger, so /Swagger. Now let's wait for the Swagger to open. Now you can see we have an account, so let's click on this and try it out. So we have a default one as email. Let's maintain this password as user at 123. So let's copy this, confirm password. Okay, so if you decide to take off one, let's execute and see. Now they are not equal, so what? Now the error here is the password do not match. And when you decide to make it more than, so let's say we have this 3, and let's delete this, let's delete this, let's see what happens. It should be, the minimum is 6 and the maximum is 100. See what happened. The password must be at least 6 and maximum as what? 100. So it means we have to add user at 123, making it 6 or 7. So user at 123. We can now go ahead and register. So we see as soon as we get it, let's see what happens here. We're gonna have success, so successful equal to true, and there's no error. Let's check our database and see. So our database, click on that. Now right click on the ASP.NET users, right click, and then go to view data. Now let's see. So we see what registered has now been captured over here. So it means registration is what? A success. We are done with that. Let's try tackle with the login. So how do you log in? Let's close this, and let's close this as well. Okay, so let's add a login controller. So the same place where you have the controller, right click. Now let's add new controller, and now there's an API empty, and here login controller. So this login controller. Now this login controller, let's see what we can actually set up in. So login controller, and the first thing that we need to do is we have to create a constructor and inject these services. So we create a constructor over here, and I will inject the I configuration and the sign image as user identity user. We inject them here and we initialize them here. Okay, now we are good to go. The next thing that we can actually do here is this is the login. So when the data is being sent, what should happen from the user? Now this login model is coming from the user. When the user passes this data, what should happen here? Now this is the first thing, we store it, the password we check if it corresponds to what you have already. Now if it is success, if it is not success, we return back the request, and this is the error. So username and password are invalid. Now if it is found, then we just create a claim, then we just pass in the name as login.email. Okay, and the next thing is we create a key. We get a key from the app settings, that is JwtBearer security key. Now aside from that, we get the credentials. We convert this as an HMAC SHA-256 as the encryption algorithm with the key that we have. We set the expiry date. Now you see here we are using days. You can decide to use what? And you see we have a lot over here. So system.date.now. Now you see we have, as soon as I pass in add, we have days, hours, microseconds, millisecond, minute, month, seconds, you have year, okay, week, and etc. But here we are using day, so add days. Then here we convert to integer what we have over there, JWT expiry date, that is 1, as we set it over there as 1. Then we generate a token from the issuer, the audience, claims, expiry date, and the credential. Then we return success and return the token being generated for that specific user. Very, very simple. Now let's save this. But as you can see from here, we need this login model. So let's copy this. Let's go ahead in the shared project. Let's create a login model. So right click, add class. Now it's going to be login model. Now with this login model, this is what we need. So we have our login model. We need, let's use these two over here. So we need this, and that's a required, and email. So here you can also specify that it's supposed to be an email type. You should check if we have the address in. Okay, and that is also, let's set this also as data type, and we can set this as, so data type dot, and here is password. Okay, so this password. Alright, now let's save this. So Ctrl+, we can remove unnecessary users. We have simple one. Now once you have this, let's close this and also create the login response or the result. So as you can see from here, we have this login result. Let's copy this as well, and now go to solution, the same model, right click, let's add class, and that's the login result. Now this login results too, we need this. So let's copy this, and in here we can now paste them here. So we need successful, that's a boolean type. We have errors, and we have this a token. So this is going to be a public. This public, you save that. Okay, now you can also close this. Now in the controller, let's Ctrl+, let's use what we have there already. So we have to, let's see, now let's go back to there, that's the login model. Now it is internal, so let's set this to public. Good, let's save that. Now we can now close it. Now Ctrl+, we can now use this model, and we have it done. Okay, so let's save this. Now we are done with the login. Okay, so once you're done with the login, when the next thing to do here is we have to work at the client side. Let's try the login and see. So you close this. Now in here, let's see with the login. So let's run the application again and see what we have now over there. So in application, you can now click on this again. Let's wait for the refresh to be done. Okay, so login. Now let's click on login and try this out. Username at example.com, and the password that we use is user at 123. So let's make it 12. Execute it, and let's see what we have now. So we see username and password are invalid, and the token is now successfully equal to false. So let's pass in the correct one, 3. Execute this. Now you can see we have our token. We have the error is now successfully equal to true. So our login to system is now working. Now we need to configure the client side, okay, and that's what you need to do now to have this system work. So our API is active and it is working perfectly. Okay, so in our client side, the first thing to do in our client side is to set up. So we can now close this server and now close this shared because we are done with them. Now we can now open the client project. Now let's click on the App.razor. We need to specify, I need to set up the authentication state provider here. So in that, in the app settings, App.razor, this is what we can do. We have it over here. Let's see if, okay, so we can now use this. Let's copy this, and the old one that we have, we can now comment this. Now here, this is what you're using. We're using a cascading. Now this cascading works with authentication state provider. Okay, so it is going to authenticate the user and check. So when the application loads the first time, this is going to check is he authenticated or not. So that's the first thing to go about, because this contains the routing. Control plus period. So let's use this over here, and it is solved now. So that's using this, or we can now cut this over here, go to the import.razor. Let's see if we paste it over here. Is it going to work? Yes, it is. So you can see it is working now. Okay, maybe you can decide to write something to the console if it is not authenticated. Now let's see if you can do that. Maybe this code is going to help us to check if it is not authenticated. We can write to the console, then we can now check. So we say if it's not authenticated, then that's what you want to do. So let's see. Okay, so if it is authenticated, then we say the username is authenticated, but if it is not, user is not authenticated. So save this, and now let's refresh our page. So in here, let's see. So let's take off this Swagger. Now let's load the application itself and see. So this loading. Let's run this again. Okay, so now this loading. Now you have error here, so right click here, let's go to inspect element. So let's wait for the response. Okay, so now we have an error here because it is saying that there's no registered service. Okay, so when we are done, we're going to see if this is actually working or not. That is the text or the statement that we specified here. As soon as we log in, you're going to see a console written. It is authenticated. If you're not, you're going to see this. Okay, so let's move on with that. At the end, you're going to see the output or the outcome of that. Alright, so the next thing that we have to do is we have to create a custom authentication state provider. Authentication state provider is provided by Microsoft defaultly, and it is there, but in case you want to override that, it is possible. So that's why we're going to create a custom one. And the name that you're going to use here, it is known as custom authentication state provider, meaning we've customized that to our own way. Okay, so how are you going to do that? We first have to create a folder, and let's say, can we create a folder and name it as helper or utility? Yeah, anyway, so right click on the client project, add new folder. Let's make that utility. So utility. Okay, now in this utility we have to create a class for that, and that's what I'm going to use. So instead of this, I'm going to use, let's copy this, and here right click and let's create a class, add a class, and this class I'm going to name it as custom. So custom authentication state provider. So let's create that. Now in this we have to create a class, that's a constructor, and inject some services. So this is the constructor that you want to create, and these are the services that we need. So we need this, so custom over here. Okay, so now the first thing that we have to also do is we have to install Blazor the local storage. Okay, so with this, let's go to Solution Explorer, and now Solution Explorer. Now under dependencies within the client project, right click and then click on Manage NuGet package. Now with this NuGet package, let's click on this. I have installed these two already, so you have to install them yourself. You can just grab them to the browser and install them. Now that is the Blazor the local storage. This is by Crescenti for provide access to local storage in our Blazor application. And we need to also install Microsoft.EFCore component.authorization. That's where we can get authentication state provider from. So we need to install these two packages over there. When we are done, we can now close this. Good, and now we are done with that. Okay, so let's see, let's close that with the import tool. Let's close it. Now in here, what we can do here is we have to inherit this from the authentication state provider. So let's inherit this over here. Okay, so now we inject an HTTP client in the local storage service, then we initialize them over here. Okay, so the next thing that we can actually do is also very simple. Let's get the authentication state provider. There is a method in between this authentication state provider. So when you click on this, right click and go to definition. Now it has authentication state provider. That's a get authentication state async. So you want to override this method. Okay, and let's do that. So let's close this, and in the code, this is what we are doing. So this method is going to override that and get us the state of that user. Is he registered, is he authenticated or not? So if authenticated, then we're going to pass in the token, but if it's not, then we're going to return now as an anonymous. And that's what you are getting over here. The authentication type here that you want to pass is the bearer, and you pass it into the default HTTP request header. Okay, and this is the token if it is authenticated, but if it is not, then watch it. So we see we're going to save the token from the local storage. Then we check if it is null. If it is null, then what do you have to do? We return new one, meaning nothing found. So that user is anonymous. But in case it is found, then we pass the token as a bearer, as a header from the HTTP request status request. Okay, so that's going to be the bearer as the authentication type. We pass in the token. Then we want to decrypt this token, so you pass it to this method, and now the type is JWT. That is a Json Web Token. Okay, so when we get the token stored in the local storage, let's see the next thing to do. And the next thing to do here is we have to check. Let's copy this and here. So mark user as authenticated. So this is going to check if everything is alright. Then we're going to mark a user as authenticated, and that is what we are using over here. Then we notify the authentication state. So from that, when the user logs out, we can now mark the user as logout, and we provide empty for the bearer and set the authentication state as what? As new. That's the claims over claims principle as new claims identity. So meaning there's no data, or there's no data related to that specific user browsing the app currently. Okay, so that is that. Now the next thing, there's a method that you need to create. So you're going to create the next stage, and the next one that we have to do is the method to convert the token into the 3 stages. Now this method is a borrowed from Steve Sanderson. Okay, so this method actually digests the token into 3 sections, and that section is what we're going to use to get the claims from that token, and we can just use that here. So as you can see, pass claims from JWT. This is JWT, or the token coming in. Then we split into it. We decide to get the rows. If it is only 1 row, we get it, but if it is more than 1, then we loop through the rows and store them. And so that's when it is 1 row, we store it over here. But if it is more than 2, if the rows start with this, it means it is more than 1. Then we're going to loop through the rows and now store them over here. So claims.add, we're going to add the claim. Okay, and now here is pass base64 without padding. So the same thing, we're going to get that to check if it's equal to, or if not, then we're going to pick any of these from the token. Now this token is added, or these keys are added to the token automatically as soon as it gets created. So in order to check whether the token has 1 equals sign or 2 equals sign, there must be a method, and this method is used to check that. At the end of the day, we're going to return this from base64 string, convert it to base64 string, then return it to this pass claims. Okay, so when you call it over here, you're going to get it the authentication state of that person. Okay, so this code here, I learned when you search for Steve Sanderson, you can now see this because it is visible and it's common. People use it all the time because it's very helpful as well. Okay, so that is it for the login, and once we are done with this, the next thing that we can actually do here is we have to create a services to render this authentication state provider and what the user is going to pass in. So let's save this, close this, and now let's create a folder, and that's going to be a service. So add new folder. Now let's name it as service. So with this service, we need to create an authentication, that's an interface, and implementation class. So service, add new item, and now interface, the name is the I stand for interface. We add that. Now the next thing that we can actually do is, let's see what we can do. So we have to create this method, and that's what we're going to use for login, logout, and create account. So this is public. So you can see we have tags. Now remember that we created this register result and this models inside the shared folder. Now you know that we're using the same thing over here, so that's why we say when you pass a model into or in the shared project, you can use it in both this side, that's the client side, or the server side. Okay, so as you can see, we have a register, login, and log out. Okay, so we can now save this. Now let's create the implementation class, and now with the implementation class, it's going to be the auth service. So let's copy this. Let's go to the service folder, right click, let's add a class, and now this class is going to be auth service. So this auth service should inherit from the I service, so it should inherit from this, so it should inherit from this one. Now we have to create a constructor and pass and initialize these services. So let's do that, and in here, okay, so we are creating HTTP client, authentication state provider, and the iLocal storage service. We initialize them here, as you can see. Then the next thing that we can do is, when the person registers, what do you want to do? You want to call the authentication service and I'm passing the model. So as you can see from here, now register coming in the model. Now this is the model it is coming in with. We store as a result, then we call post as async, so API/account, and then what the model we are sending is what? That's the register model. API and account. Remember that account here is a controller that we just created. Now we check if it is not equal to, if the success code is not equal to true, then we return error occurred. But if it is true, then we want to say account created successfully. Okay, now let's see with the login as well. So when the person tries to log in, what do you want to do? So this method is going to help us with the login. So let's copy this, and now with the login, this is what we are doing, the login over here. So coming from the login model, and we first realize it, then we post it to API/login. So login, that is a controller. Now the type is application/JSON file. Now we serialize it and read the content over here. Now when you read and it is success, then we set the item to local storage as auth token. Then this is the token that you want to use. But if it is not, then we return the result. Okay, because we return the output over here, and we set the text, the token, as the request header to the HTTP request header. So we set the type as bearer, and this is the token. Okay, so with this authentication state provider, what we did was a custom. So there's a custom authentication state provider. So control+period, let's use the utility folder that we just created, and that is exactly what we are doing here. Now the last method that you need to do is the logout. So when the user clicks on the logout, what do you want to do? You want to set the local storage to null. So local storage, you remove the item name as auth token, and let's copy this. We set return anonymous, then we set the header to null. So not going to be any header, we set it to null. So instead of having the token as a header here, when the person logs in, when the person logs out, we set the header to null. All right, now we are good to go. So we are almost done with authentication. Now what you have to do here is you have to create our register component. So let's close this, and in code, let's try to create a registration component. And now with this, actually I'll leave this code at a GitHub link, so this code is going to be available. Okay, so if you want to grab the content here, it's going to be available as well. So let's see. So this is an Explorer. Now in our pages, right click, let's add a new razor component, and it's going to be register. So register, and this register, you can now just copy this, and now we paste it here. Okay, so with this registration, first let's import this control+period. Let's import the services, or we can now cut this and now go to save this, go to the import.razor, and let's paste it there, because so we can be used globally in all the sections of the component that we're going to be using. So let's import it here. Let's save this, close that. Okay, and you have it here. All right, so as you can see from here, we are showing errors. If there's error, display it over here, and we create a div class. This is the class type. Now you create, this is a bootstrap. Okay, this is a card body, and etc. So please enter your details, and we have edit form. The model is register model. When everything is successful, we want to handle with this event, handle registration. When there's any error, display them over here. And these are, we are going for email, password, and confirm password. That is it. And we have the submit button. Now this register model, so here control+period, let's include the models. So we include models over here, and now with these models too, we can now cut this and then go to the import. So where's our import? Yeah, so you can go to the import, and now we can paste them here too. Okay, so register, you're good to go. So we create an object out of the register, the model. We set an error, show result. Then there's the list to hold the errors. Then here we called with the await keyword. We called when the method is called, you call the register service or method, you pass in this register model. Okay, the results here determine if successful, return to the login, but if it is not, then we return the results or we show the output to the user. That's very simple, isn't it? So that's the registration. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do is, let's see, so we have to also create a login component, and that's what we're going to use for the login. So login component, let's create a component known as login. So pages, right click, and I'll go to add razor component, and now this is going to be login.razor. So login.razor. Now with this login, let's see what you're going to do here. Do I have login here? I think I have it. Yeah, that is a login. So I just copy this and here. Don't worry with the code, I'm going to make it available as well. Okay, so don't worry. Now we're using the auth service and the navigation manager. We also check if there's errors. If there's not, when it's submitted, we call this method, we display errors over here, and we're using email. We need email and password. This is a submit button. Okay, so we have an object out of the login model that they are passing in. We show errors. This is a method. When the method is called, we call the list login method. If it's successful, return to the home page. If it is not, return the error. Okay, now the last one here is we have to create the logout. So let's create the logout component. So with the logout component, let's see, solution, pages, add razor component, and now here we're going to call it as logout. So logout. Now with this logout, let's see, this logout, control, copy this, and in here let's paste this here. So we need the auth service as well. Now when it is logout, when this button is clicked and the page initialized async, you want to call this auth service logout, then return to the home page. Okay, so this return to the home page when it is logged out. Go to the home page, we save that. Now let's close all this. Okay, so once we have the logout, we have to create a login display, and that is the component to display on top, either login or logout, and register as well. So let's create a component known as login display. That is over here. So I'm gonna create a new component, and let's add this. That is the add new razor component, and the name of that component here is going to be login display. So login display. Now with this login display, we want to use this as a login display. So that's when it is authorized, we want to display the user's name. If it is, and we display logout, and we use this logout method, okay, to call for this. But when it is not, if it's not authorized, then we want to display register and login. So control plus period. Let's see what we have to use. Control plus period. Let's see, authorized view, control plus period, or authorized. Let's see what we need to use over here, so we can just skip these errors. Okay, so let's save this. Now let's close this, and now let's go back again. Login display. Let's see, control plus. Alright, so yeah, they are gone. So let's save this, and now you can now close this. Okay, so once you have all this set, we have to update the main layout component. So let's update it. Main layout, another shared folder, main layout, and now in here let's use login display component that we created. So login display, and we display it over here, we save it. We can now close that. And the last thing to do here is we have to register the services. That is the authentication state provider services that we created as an customized one. We have to also create a dependency injection between the auth service and the authentication service classes that you created, and you have to register the local storage as well. So let's do that in the program.cs file. So program.cs file, this is what we need to do. Under app settings, program.cs file, let's see what we have to do. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's add this first. That's the local storage, and so in here let's add these two. So services.add Blazor local storage, you have to add that, and add authorization cost. Remember that this program.cs file, it is from the client, not the server. Okay, the API. Now you have to create a dependency injection. So you can create a dependency injection using this against the authentication state provider, and this is not API, but rather it's going to be a custom state provider. So this is what we need. So control plus period, and you have to use utility folder. And now the next thing that we can do here is we can also add the last one, that is the auth service. So let's also create the dependency injection. Okay, so all what we are trying to say here is these are the dependents, these are the main one, these are the interfaces. Okay, when these interfaces are called, that's the authentication state provider and the auth service, when they are called, you want to create an instance of these classes and now send them here. When a method is called within this interface, the definition is found in this. So when the instances are created, when a method is called, it can be found in the instance. That is very simple. I believe this is clear. So that's what we need to do. Now let's save this and let's build the application, and now we are good to go now. So let's see. So it is reloading. We wait while it gets reloaded. So there's error here. Now let's see where these errors are coming from. So let's see. Okay, so we have to take off one. Yeah, let's try it again. Okay, so you can see that we are in the home page. Now let's go to inspect element. So let's close all these tabs. Now console, and now you can see that when you check here, this requires an authenticated user. Okay, so it means user here, it is not authenticated, as you can see. So these requirements were not met. Deny anonymous authorization requirement. Okay, so let's see. Let's try to log in. Remember that you've created an account already. So let's log in. Now we use this example, no, not example, we use that one as a user. So user, and the password is user at 123. Now let's before we submit that, click on fetch data, and now go to network. Now there is the controller. Click on this controller, and now with the header, let's see. So you can see with the header we have only cookies. We are not having the authentication, the bearer token. So let's go to the login, and now let's try to log in again. So user at 123. We're passing 1 2. Now let's see what happens. So I pass in 1 2. So let's see if we're going to have any response. So you can see we have username and password that are not valid. And you can see there's no cookie here again. There's a cookie, but there's no token. So when I click on this login, we still have the same cookie, but we have no what token, and that is the post method, and these are details from the header. Okay, let's pass in the correct one. So let's add the 3, submit. Let's see what we're gonna have here. So you can see you have hello, we have the username on top, and we have logout. Now as soon as I click on that, let's see. So let's fetch data. And this header, now you see we have authorization, we have this bearer token on top here. Right, now let's go to application, And now let's click on local storage and local storage. Now you can see we have auth token, that's the name that we use, and this is a token. Now this token must correspond, it starts with EY and ends at HK. Let's see with what we have at the header. So network header is ends with HK and starts with EY, so HK. So that is it. So it means our authentication is working. Now let's try to log out and see. So if I log out, let's go to the application. Now local storage, you will see it is gone, it's deleted. Now if I click on fetch data, let's go to network forecast. Now you can see we have only cookie, bearer token is off. Alright, so that is it for the authentication. Now with this, we are done with authentication, registration, and logging into application. But the next thing that we're going to talk about is going to be role-based authentication or role-based authorization. If I want to, when I'm here, if I sign in as a normal user, what are the features that I'm going to get? If I sign as administrator, what are the features that I'm going to get? We're going to talk about that maybe in the next video. So I also leave the link to a GitHub under the description, so you can get all the source code for this project, and maybe if you want to compare with yours or check some things, one or two things in it, it is possible. It's going to be available as well. You can just give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you like what I'm doing, and if you have any question too, don't forget you can just pass over there, and we're going to try together to help you solve it as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to catch you up in the next video.